The AFC Championship. Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes. Exactly what it should be. It's the fourth playoff matchup between the two best quarterbacks in the NFL. The two top names in the sport. It's Peyton, it's Tom, it's Brady, it's Manning 2.0. These two, 4-4, regular season and postseason combined. I know that a lot is made of 3-0 for Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs. So this storyline is all about Josh Allen. Can he finally overcome the demons and defeat the Chiefs? No less in the kingdom of Arrowhead. That's going to be the question. The Chiefs, their only legitimate loss this season was against the Buffalo Bills, and we're going to heavily lean into what happened in that game in order to explain what we could see in this game. On top of that, the Buffalo Bills, many have argued this might be their best overall team that they've had since Josh Allen has become the quarterback, and they have more experience than they've ever had as well. The Chiefs, nobody wants to bet against because they're back-to-back champs. They're going for a three-peat, and three-peat is history, but it's also history that's never been made. And is it more likely that they lose this game than the Super Bowl? Probably. If the Chiefs do make it to the Super Bowl, it's hard to envision them losing. I would say that, right? So let's break down what could take place between Patrick Mahomes, Taylor Swift, Travis Kelce, Andy Reid versus Josh Allen, Sean McDermott, James Cook, and the Buffalo Bills. The Mafia, the Kingdom. Let's talk about it. The tale of the tape. The Bills, third in DVOA, Chiefs sixth. Offensively, Bills second, Chiefs ninth. Bills also defensively 11th, Chiefs 15th in EPA. Okay. Bills also had a significantly better point differential. So, at least statistically, not record-wise, but statistically, the Bills were the superior team during the regular season. But the thing has always been between the Chiefs and the Bills. The Bills beat the Chiefs in the regular season, but they don't beat them in the playoffs, and the Chiefs are able to elevate in the playoffs. Last week, I felt like the Chiefs, they were the only team in the history of the sport to achieve what they did and win. So it's kind of interesting. They didn't really elevate their game in that game. They did enough to beat the Texans, but it wasn't super impressive. While the Bills, they were very impressive against the Broncos. And in the second game, they got a little lucky against Baltimore, but Baltimore was seen as the worst matchup in the league for the Bills. So they did have to get a little lucky for them to win, which we broke down last week. Okay, now going back to the first matchup. By the way, Kansas City is favored by 2 at home. Now, going back to the first matchup, who was there and who wasn't? For the Chiefs, there was no Watson, their number 2 cornerback. There was no Hollywood Brown, no Isaiah Pacheco. And at left tackle, they were playing Morris and not Tooney. For the Buffalo Bills, they did not have their right tackle Spencer Brown, linebacker Matt Milano, tight end Dalton Kincaid, or wide receiver Keon Coleman. Okay? That game ended 30-21. When looking at the players that were missed, I would argue that the Bills had more significant players that missed the game. Matt Milano being arguably their best defender, Spencer Brown being one of the best right tackles in the league, and Dalton Kincaid being just a player that uniquely matches up well with the Chiefs. While the Chiefs could definitely benefit from Hollywood Brown in this matchup and Watson to help them pass and stop the pass, I don't necessarily feel like those are bigger deals than what the Bills were missing, but they were both missing players nonetheless. 30-21 was the final score. It was in Buffalo. It was 23-14 for the Bills at one point when Curtis Samuel was wide open on a crosser underneath for a touchdown. It was then 23-21, making the game very close. And then at the end, the Bills had the ball with 7:53 remaining, held the ball until 2:17 left. Josh Allen ran the ball 4 different occasions and took one in for the epic touchdown that is maybe the play of the season, especially if the Bills go on to win the Super Bowl. 30-21 was the final score. Now, what was unique and what stood out statistically in that game? That was the worst EPA allowed by the Chiefs defense in a game in the entire season. It was also the only team for the entire season to score 30 points on the Chiefs, the Buffalo Bills. The Bills were also far better on 3rd and 4th down, 10 for 17 on 3rd and 4th down, while the Chiefs were only 5 for 11. And that is significant because the Chiefs have been really good on 3rd down this year. So that's interesting. The Chiefs also didn't score a point in the first or the third quarter, like not a single point. So they were held without a point in 2 of the 4 quarters. There was a little bit of a lull during that game, I would say in like the third quarter, like right after halftime. Nobody could really do anything on offense for a little bit. Now let's break down the sides of the football, the Bills offense versus the Chiefs defense first. Now I think perhaps the biggest factor in this entire game will be the run game. And I think the biggest reason the run game is so significant is because both of these teams have shown a want to possess the ball. Just like the Commanders and the Eagles, they very much function, more so the Chiefs than the Bills, but they function a lot based on being able to win time of possession. And the run game is a huge factor here. Now, what's impressed me about Buffalo is that they have been super impressive running the ball against 2 of the best run defenses in the playoffs in the NFL. So they ran the ball the best. They gave the Broncos and the Ravens their worst run defense output of the entire season in back-to-back games. In the first game, the Bills were not able to run the ball against the Chiefs with their running backs at all. Their running backs averaged 3.6 yards per carry or less. The Chiefs at that time were arguably the best run defense in the league. We'll discuss whether or not they're still at that point. Allen did have 12 carries, 4 of them coming on the last drive. I think that Allen will have at least 12 carries in this game. I think he might carry the ball 15 times. But I think a lot of it might be more early in the game rather than just late in the game. I think that because this is a playoff game, I think we'll see more of it early rather than late. The Chiefs have been weaker against the run lately than they were back in that game. Shout out to Ultra. He gave me these stats. So the Chiefs' run defense during week 1 to week 8 was 3rd in EPA per play and 8th in success rate, while from week 9 on, they are 22nd in EPA per play and 15th in success rate, including games against Joe Mixon last week where he ran the ball pretty well. You know, the Steelers ran the ball pretty well. There were some games where teams were able to run the ball against the Chiefs a lot better than they were early in the season when the Chiefs looked like one of the best run defenses in the league. What was also a huge factor with the Bills not being able to run the ball against the Chiefs in week 11 was Spencer Brown. Spencer Brown being injured. The Bills have been most effective running the ball to the right this season, which is where Spencer Brown lines up. He is the highest graded run blocker on the team and ranks 13th among all tackles in the NFL. The Bills have ran the ball to the right for 447 yards this season, 5.3 yards per carry and 7 touchdowns. Against Kansas City, they had 5 attempts for 6 yards, 1.2 yards per carry, and they did have a touchdown. The first touchdown of the game was James Cook running in for a touchdown. But that's significant. Spencer Brown was a huge factor there in the run game, and I'm interested to see how that differs this time around. Now, the run game, I do think Buffalo will be able to run it better than they did the first game for sure, just because I haven't really seen them run that poorly all year, and I do think Spencer Brown was a big part of that. I also don't think the Chiefs necessarily want to sell out to stop the run because Josh Allen is so good throwing the ball. So I don't necessarily think that the Chiefs are just going to line up and force Allen to beat them. That would kind of be idiotic. So I do think that the Bills will be able to run the ball quite a bit on early downs and kind of establish what they want to do through the ground game. And we'll discuss whether or not the Chiefs will be able to do the same thing on the other side. Now, in the passing game, the Bills running backs and tight ends are always influential to how they play. This, in my opinion, could be the game that Dalton Kincaid was drafted for. The Chiefs have been the worst team against tight ends. I talk about this every week, but they've been the worst team against tight ends all season. And Kincaid did not play in the first game. So he could be a big guy to go to in man-to-man situations and or third downs to be able to convert. Dawson Knox had 4 catches for 40 yards in the first game. He would also be a guy that usually does have success against the Chiefs, to be fair, but he could be another component there as the secondary option at that position, and these 2 players could maybe give the Chiefs some issues. Rather than trying to attack McDuffie, they might be able to hone in on those safeties and those linebackers to be able to pick their matchups there. Another guy that had a sneaky good game against the Chiefs last time was Curtis Samuel. He had 5 catches for 58 yards and a touchdown, and just based on what I saw, I think it's because of how shifty and fast he is. I think for the number 2 and number 3 corners of the Chiefs, he is a difficult matchup because those guys are more so tall and physical rather than fast. So I think Curtis Samuel is a guy to watch for in a prop standpoint as well. He could be somewhat sneaky. Ty Johnson is also a really good option out of the backfield that could make some plays, as we saw against the Broncos on one of the best catches I saw all season. Now, one of the questions I have is like, how much man are the Chiefs going to play? Because if you play too much man against Josh, he's proven he can burn you and toast you. And, you are pressing those receivers and making them make plays, which is kind of the dicey element of the Bills' passing attack. Like, the Ravens kind of did win those matchups more often than not last game, and a lot of the Bills' passing game was underneath and screens and quick passes. But I think that was very intentional, not only because the Bills got out to a lead, but also because I think that's kind of what they wanted to do. They wanted to keep the ball away from Lamar Jackson and not allow that potent Ravens offense to wear on their defense and try to do the opposite to the Ravens. So I think they tried to kind of go dink and dunk in that game, and it was fairly successful overall. Enough for them to win, certainly. Now, I do think because of the style that the Chiefs might play, they might lean a little bit into that. They might have to blitz a little bit against Allen to be able to get pressure, because in the first game, it felt like they couldn't get pressure with 4. The Bills have a very good O-line this year, which might be the difference maker in whether they win this game or not. Like, whether they've won or lost these games in the past has kind of come down to their ability to block. And the Bills' O-line this season is better than I ever remember it, and I think that they blocked the Ravens exceptionally well, and I think they could do the same against the Chiefs, because the Chiefs' pass rush isn't very good, and especially with Spencer Brown back, they blocked them well enough in the first game, and I was extremely impressed watching that game how often they picked up the blitz of Spagnuolo and how often Allen was able to find an answer against the blitz, right? They did do a very efficient job on third down, like I said earlier, 10 for 17. Houston was also very good on third down last week. They went 10 for 17 in that game against the Chiefs. So something to look out for is the Chiefs maybe not being as good on third down as they typically are. And for a team like Buffalo to maybe be able to hit some explosives when the Chiefs tend to get a little bit more aggressive and things to open up there. Because I do think that, Allen doesn't take sacks. I think he's taken like 17 in 19 games. So he doesn't really take a lot of sacks. I do think the X factor, obviously, on this front is Chris Jones. Chris Jones is not only the X factor because of how good he is, but if there is a matchup for Chris Jones to win, it should be on the inside of the line of the Bills. Their tackles are exceptional, and it feels like their guard, their center could be the area where you can attack the most. So Chris Jones did get some pressures on Josh in the first game, but pretty much every single time, Allen made the guy miss, like every single time. So we'll see if he can convert those to sacks this time rather than getting ran by or just, ran through. I think another X factor is Kansas City's secondary. Can they win their matchups on the outside similarly to Baltimore? Now, Baltimore, I do think, has kind of better, like Marlon Humphrey and Wiggins are really good, and they've got Kyle Hamilton. Like, I like the way that they go about kind of covering, but Watson could be a difference maker because Johnson, last time they played, he gave up a couple big plays to Amari Cooper early in the game. So can Watson, level that out a little bit and allow McDuffie to maybe shadow somebody like Shakir? Shakir had a really good game. He was the leading receiver for the Bills in the first matchup. And it will be interesting to see what they do with McDuffie from a defensive standpoint. Like, did they put him on a Curtis Samuel? Did they put him on an Amari Cooper? Or do they have, and then they double team Shakir? Or do they have, Shakir get covered by McDuffie and then they kind of do some different things with their blitzes and things like that? But Amari Cooper had some big catches in the first half last time. Curtis Samuel had a good game. It felt like the Bills mostly moved the ball pretty well in the first game. Like I said, it was the worst game of the Chiefs season defensively. But the only area that the Bills really succeeded in the run game was Ty Johnson in the gun. So I just think when thinking about this side of the ball, it's going to come down to the Chiefs' ability or inability to get a little bit of pressure on Allen, which I tend to favor the Bills. It's going to come down to, can the Chiefs once again stifle the Bills' run attack, which I don't necessarily think they will. And then I do think the Chiefs can win in coverage, but if Allen has time, I don't necessarily think that it matters that much. So I definitely think the Bills are going to move the ball and score. Like, I definitely think they're going to score upwards of 27 points. So I think for the Chiefs to win this game, believe it or not, they're going to have to outscore Buffalo, because I think the Bills will throw in their quarterback run game. They have a very efficient screen game. They're very balanced on offense. They're going to have a number of different mismatches to look out for. I think the Chiefs can have moments where they play man coverage and stifle those receivers, but I just don't see how they get a lot of pressure on Josh, and his level of creativity might be able to overcome the disadvantage that he has on the perimeter. So even in past matchups, we've seen that as well. So I definitely think the Bills are going to score a good amount of points. Now, flipping to the other side of the football, the Chiefs offense versus the Bills defense. Mahomes hasn't thrown an interception since he played Buffalo. He threw 2 interceptions against the Bills in a game in which they lost, the only game they lost. He threw 2 interceptions, one at the beginning, like literally the first throw of the game, and one at the end. The end one, I don't really care about. That doesn't really matter. They were already going to lose the game anyways. The first one, that was bad. It was really bad too. He just threw it like right to wrap, which was interesting. But the Chiefs haven't scored 31 points all year. Okay, which is an interesting stat because, like I said, the Bills, won this game 30-21. So it feels like, or the last game, 30-21. So the Chiefs are going to have to score maybe 30 to win this game, which is something they haven't really done all year. Now, I do think there is an avenue for them to do it, obviously through great coaching, great scheme, and then a couple of playmakers. I think the playmakers that they should rely on are Xavier Worthy, Travis Kelce, obviously, and Kareem Hunt. These are the 3 X factors for the Chiefs offense. In the first game, Travis Kelce was pretty much silent and not heard of or heard from. He had 8 yards the last time he played the Bills on 2 catches. And Worthy was really good in this first game. He did have one play where he had 1 foot out of bounds and he caught a deep ball that was going into Bills territory. He had 1 foot out of bounds. If he catches that pass, I think he would have had over 100 yards in the game. This was the first game in which I noticed that Worthy was utilized the way that he's been utilized for the entire season. He had a long reception on a deep post. He was very involved in the screen game. He scored the first touchdown of the game. This was the first game in which he was really used in the motions. He was really used in the screen game, the yak department, used as a downfield. He was featured in this game more than pretty much any game previous to this. Christian Benford covered DeAndre Hopkins like a blanket for the entire game. The Bills played a lot of man coverage, which is something that they don't typically do, but they definitely ramped it up against the Chiefs. The Chiefs actually used a lot of Mecole Hardman at certain points in this game, and it was pretty effective. And I actually think not using Hardman would be a mistake against Buffalo, because I think the way to beat Buffalo is by using as much speed and quickness as you can, because I think the Bills tend to be a little bit slower in their coverage, and I think quicker and faster guys give them issues typically, like Tyreek Hill used to, for example. 16-14 was the score for the entire third quarter, so neither offense was really able to do anything. But like I said, the Chiefs, they only scored in 2 of the quarters in the game the first time. And interesting enough, against Houston, DeAndre Hopkins, Hollywood Brown, and Juju, all 3 of these guys had 0 catches against the Texans. 0 catches. 4 targets, 0 catches. So they're going to need more than Travis Kelce to beat the Bills. They're going to need other guys to step up, like Worthy, like Hollywood. It will be interesting to see if the Bills do play more man again. How do they match up now with Hollywood? Because he's an added element here to the game plan. Like, if they want to put Benford, let's say, on Worthy, or are Tehran on Worthy, then, okay, do they put, is Douglas on D-Hop? That would make sense. Okay, then the other one, I guess, would take Hollywood. Like, how does that go? Who wins those matchups? That's obviously a big deal. But on third down, especially, the Bills would run like a 4-man rush, and they would have Bernard as a spy, and that caught Mahomes on 2 sacks in the game. Early in the game, they rushed 4. They got a little bit of pressure. Mahomes ran into the spy, and he got sacked twice. That was a wrinkle that we saw against Bo Nix as well, and even Lamar Jackson last week, that I definitely think we'll see again, where the Bills played a lot of man, and then they would have a 5-man rush technically, but one of the guys would be a spy. This is kind of the entire X factor of the game, because I think when you look at it from a perimeter standpoint, the Bills will have issues with all the movement, the creativity of Reed's scheme, the one-on-one matchups. I think if Mahomes has the time, I think he'll be able to make plays, but the question will be, will he have time like Josh? And this could be maybe where the Bills win or lose the game, right? Can the Chiefs run it to kind of keep the Bills at bay from a pass rushing standpoint, which the Chiefs have not been running the ball effectively all season? So this is a big deal. The Bills are, I think, top 5 in EPA run defense overall. They weren't great against the Ravens, but they typically struggle against power running teams that have a lot of big people on the field, and the Chiefs don't tend to run the ball that way. So will they throw a wrinkle out there, do multi-tight end formations, get a fullback in the game, do some funky stuff that way to run the ball and open the Bills defense up a little bit? That could be something that Reed throws out there. And maybe open up play action, which this was the highest percentage, the first matchup, the highest percentage of play action that the Chiefs ran all season was against the Bills. So I think they have the intent of running the ball and setting up play action to kind of toy with those linebackers in a similar sense to how Baltimore wanted to attack the Bills. But the problem is the Ravens are a historic level offense with a back-to-back MVP candidate, and the Chiefs, they haven't really been able to run the ball all year, right? One team had Derrick Henry, one team has Kareem Hunt, who might be able to hit you with a 4-yard gain, but not a 60. So the Bills' fear of the running game is certainly totally different, and I think that will allow them to play more pass coverage and pass defense and perhaps get away with a lighter box than what they were featuring against the Ravens, which is why I think they gave up so many plays down the field. But we'll see how that ends up. I also think that Joe Thuney has helped the Chiefs on the offensive line to protect Mahomes for the most part, except for last week, where he allowed 2 sacks against Will Anderson, but that is Will Anderson. It's hurt their running game, in my opinion, because the strength of their run game before was their interior, and without him in the interior, you've got Frank Caliendo in there trying to block people. So I don't know how that's, if they can run the ball, that's a big game changer, an X factor and an unknown, because the Chiefs have not really been relying on that or even been efficient in that. So maybe they go with more screens, more of a extension of the running game sort of style, but I kind of feel like they do need to be able to run the ball a bit, because I think they're going to struggle with the pass rush of the Bills a little bit, because Thuney allowed, 2 sacks last week. The Texans had a 40% pressure rate against the Chiefs. And when you look at the matchup for matchup, like you've got Von Miller against Jawan Taylor on big downs. Von Miller's been very good lately. Ed Oliver was very good against Baltimore, and he could dominate Caliendo on the inside. And then you also have Rousseau against Joe Thuney. So can Joe Thuney kind of match Rousseau this time around and not have issues? I'd almost rather have the Chiefs maybe play Thuney inside to help their running game out, but I don't think that's what they're going to do. So when I look at the line of scrimmage, I kind of think the Bills will be able to rush the quarterback better than the Chiefs will be able to rush the quarterback. And I do think that Josh is better at running than Mahomes. So I do think that Josh being an element in the running game, even if the Bills running backs aren't successful, I think there will be an element to fall back on with Josh running rather than Pat running. So I think the difference, honestly, for me in this game is that the Bills' running game is better and the Bills' offensive line is better. And I think that's ultimately the difference. That's kind of what I think. I think the Bills, the defenses are relatively the same. They play different styles. I think the Chiefs are maybe a little bit better in the secondary, while the Bills are maybe a little bit better up front in their front seven, but it's like very close either way. The Chiefs can win this game if Hunt runs the ball well, Worthy makes some explosives, and Kelsey makes the clutch conversions. The Bills will win this game if they outrun and outpossess the Chiefs, if they get to Mahomes more often, and if Allen makes a couple special plays. It should be a good game. It should be close. I could see a script that's fairly similar to last time they played, where the Bills win by about like 8 points. But I could also see it coming down to a field goal. I'm going to say that the Bills win something like 30-23. I think that will be my score. I think it will be like whichever team. I'll say if the Chiefs win, they win by a field goal, but I think if the Bills win, they win by like 6 or 7. That's going to be my guess. I do think the Bills are the better team. I do think the Bills match up really well with the Chiefs. I'm not counting the Chiefs out, but just from what I see in breaking down the game, I feel like the Bills have more advantages here. This is the first time I feel like talking about these teams playing each other where I actually feel that way. Last year, it was different because I wanted the Bills to win, but this year I actually think the Bills are going to win. That's the difference. I actually think the Bills are going to win. I actually think the Bills are better. Last year, I wanted the Bills to win, right? There's a difference between the two. And yeah, the Chiefs are just going to have to prove to me on offense that they can actually do something, even against kind of a mediocre defense. Like, their offense has just been so kind of like vanilla, like not vanilla is not the good word, but it's just not been that effective or explosive. And I think that the Bills are more explosive. So I'm going to take Buffalo 30-23 in this game, and I think they will win this game. And I don't think the refs will be that involved, honestly. There might be a call or two, but I don't really think the refs are going to be involved because I think that the NFL has heard about, the concerns of fans. Like, I think at this point it's become so outrageous and like so over the top with the fan like amusement when it comes to this level of Chiefs stuff that I feel like there's probably not going to be a lot of calls, honestly.